If you're enjoying the Health Geeks Book Club podcast, we'd appreciate if you hit the subscribe button, leave a like, rating, or review, whichever your preferred podcatcher platform allows.
This edition of our podcast is brought to you by 360 Health and Well Balanced Nutrition.
Welcome to the Health Geeks Book Club podcast. Listen in as Kristen Norton and Eleanor Russell review all those great health and wellness books you've been wanting to read or you have read and want to talk about. Here's Kristen and Eleanor.
Hey, Eleanor, how are you?
Oh, I am feeling good today.
Well, I am excited to bring in a friend of mine as a guest and a friend of yours.
Actually, I'm just getting to know Brittney.
Brittney Biggs, thanks
Hello.
for joining us today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Now, Brittney, we have read some really cool books on the mind-body connection, and I've talked to you about your training, and I just thought it would be so cool to have you come on the podcast and talk about wilderness fusion and the other ways that you have really learned about the mind-body healing connection. So tell us, what in the world is this wilderness fusion? I'm dying to hear.
Yeah, so thank you. I love any opportunity to discuss the mind-body connection. I could really nerd out on this all day. I really think it's important, and I love that it seems like the healing world is gravitating more towards the mind-body connection. I think in traditional counseling, which I am also a student, I'm in the mental health counseling program at Wake Forest University. I think there is it tends to be a focus of, all in the mind, all of the psychology and the psyche, and we forget that it lives in a physical body. And so a few years ago, I started a healing program called Niasziih Healing at Wilderness Fusion. Their campus is located just outside of Asheville, North Carolina, in the mountains. And basically, it uses it's an all-encompassing approach. It uses deep contact and awareness to work with the mind, body, and spirit. And it was basically started by our founder and our lead teacher, Carl Dresky, and he once taught at the Barbara Brennan School of Healing, which, for those of you that know Barbara, she was a former NASA physicist that dedicated her life to researching the human energy field in the realms of human consciousness.
Oh, wow.
So, and then he also worked for a very long time as a shaman at Tom Brown Jr.'s Tracker School in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey. And Tom, he actually learned from his teacher, grandfather Stalking Wolf, who was a part of a band of Southern Lipan Apache that never surrendered. And Stalking Wolf wandered the Americas for over 63 years, collecting wisdom from various teachers, healers, religious leaders, learning the ways of many Native people. And so that knowledge, that sacred knowledge, was passed on to Tom, who then passed that on to Carl. And he really encouraged him to start Wilderness Fusion over 10 years ago to teach this modality called Niasziih Healing. And Niasziih can be translated into a place of healing. And it really addresses both the limitations and the gifts that arise from our wounding, and moving us towards peace, love, joy, and purpose. And so really excited to have been a part of that the last 4 years. It's a total of a 7-year earth-based curriculum. And so, I've in addition to the healing program, I've also done their online intensive that focuses on more of like the psychology and philosophy pieces. And I've also been a client in their bodywork program, which is ran by his wife, Pat Miller, who was once a professional ballerina, and she's been a body worker for over 25 years. And a lot of the bodywork curriculum focuses on the vagus nerve, which I hear is a big part of the book.
We just finished the book called The Polyvagal Theory.
Brittney,
Anchored.
I just kind of wanted to ask you a question. The total focus, though, is on healing. It's not on, is it on maintenance of good health or finding true health and staying there?
Yeah, I think that it is really holistic health because it involves not just our mind, but our body, the earth. It is an earth-based curriculum. And so there's a spiritual component to it. So it's all encompassing. It really, truly is focused on a holistic approach and also, our bodies. We are our first home. And so it really focuses on healing those wounds and transforming them. And it's phenomenal. I really wish to share that with everyone because I have learned more about myself than I ever thought possible.
Now, does it assume we all have wounds and some trauma in us that need healing?
I don't know if I would say that it assumes that. But trauma, when we think about trauma, most of us think about the big stuff, war, accidents, natural disasters. But trauma cannot be measured. I mean, something as little as, for example, birth. Birth is our very first trauma. Every human being goes through birth, right? Mm-hmm. And so even though we can't remember our birth necessarily,
your body might.
Through that. Yes, our body remembers. Yeah. And that is actually what I've learned through my own healing journey with wilderness fusion.
Gotcha. And we may be going throughout life not realizing our trauma or our past experiences affecting us.
Yeah, because a lot of times for protection, you subliminate that stuff.
Yeah.
And then it's, all these people that have found, oh my gosh, I was raped when I was 5 and I didn't remember it, because they've put the protective barriers up. Speaking about the size of the injury, I saw a post on Facebook this morning about it's really hard to forgive somebody who backstabs me, and so that's just maybe a small, I think, surprise for this person, but they're traumatized by it because they don't know how to incorporate that, whatever happened, that they felt they were backstabbed. That's a violent term, backstabbed.
Yeah, and I think that trauma has a whole spectrum, right?
It's not like the building fell on him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
it was a social interaction.
Exactly. It is all connected to our social interactions and our relationships. It could be experiencing our parents' divorce, experiencing divorce. It could be, I was rear-ended on the highway. It's surprising how these shocks to the system, no matter how big or small, can have a profound impact on the way our body functions.
How about, self-expectation? Like, I didn't make the grade to get to medical school and I'm useless.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
Is that considered trauma?
I don't know. I'm wondering, can we self-traumatize because of those comparison factors of what we're supposed to be?
Good question.
I mean, I have a personal opinion that a lot of our suffering is created in our mind. It doesn't necessarily differentiate between what is real and what is imagined. And so we can put a lot of that pressure on us that puts ourselves through a lot of torment and a lot of anxiety. So,
Well, that may come back to the polyvagal idea because we were just talking about information from nowhere. If your body is sensing input and your brain is not aware, or your higher cortical centers are not aware of it, you can interpret that inappropriately, because we've been talking about if I'm sitting in a room and some strange people come in and I don't know who they are and my heart starts racing, but I think I want to meet them and then I start sweating, my body is picking up signals at the autonomic level and responding to that before my brain's had a chance to evaluate.
So they might have like a straight face, but our nervous system interprets that as, oh my gosh, they're mean, or I'm going to be hurt, or I'm not going to be heard, whatever information.
Yeah, and we don't even know we're doing that.
We don't.
Yeah,
no.
Right.
Or we might not realize it. But you said the bodywork is involved in the polyvagal. Is that part of the wilderness fusion training, or is that kind of a separate thing?
Yeah, so wilderness fusion has several programs within.
Okay.
And So they have the Niasziih Healing program, but they also have the Niasziih Bodywork, which really encompasses more of the body movement and the body's connection. And they do focus, they don't necessarily use polyvagal theory in the program, but they focus a great deal. A lot of the curriculum is focused on the vagus nerve, because the vagus nerve, Pat and Carl call it the highway to the body. Mm-hmm. Because it really is connected to everything. And so there's a big focus on teaching of the vagus nerve. And I haven't got into that. I'm actually thinking about pursuing the bodywork program just because I'm so fascinated with our body's nervous system and the connection that it has. Like, for example, just what you were saying a second ago, when you walk into the room and you weren't nervous, but all of a sudden your heart rate speeds up, and it's like your brain physically that this situation that you're in, being in a room with other people, is not a threat, but somehow the physiological responses our brain is getting associates that with a threat or with past trauma. And so I think that's why it's important to know how, the nervous system works, and how, to regulate and how to work with it in any healing modality, no matter, what it is, whether it's traditional counseling or other holistic methods.
Right. But when we're talking about vagus, that's autonomic nervous system. And so I always get curious about, how do we regulate a system that is reflexive? It's one neuron to another neuron, and here comes a neurotransmitter, the other one fires, and that's what's going to happen. So how are you going to interfere with that?
And to bounce off of that, is body work like yoga, breathing, meditation, massage? What is body work?
Yeah, I feel like it's all of the above.
Okay.
It's really a modality of its own that really encompasses all of the things that you mentioned. And so, there is even a physical component. Recently I was a bodywork client in their clinic a few weeks ago, actually. And it was just basically intuitively manipulating my body, like maybe perhaps applying pressure to the hips, or rotating my legs in a certain direction, or extending that range of motion past what you are normally occupying. Because part of the body work and the focus is almost reawakening these parts of our bodies that we have shut down, or there's muscle fibers in our fascia and things that we are no longer using. So it's actually really about tapping into those places that we are, those, if you want to call them dead spaces, for example, in our body that we're no longer accessing. And part of that, I personally think it can be connected to the body's nervous system response. For example, you think about freeze, and when we disassociate or parts of our body shut down, that to me it reflects in our physicality. It reflects in our certain parts of our body. If that makes sense.
So we might not freeze in the sense of like completely shutting down or dissociating, but certain body parts may do that for us while we keep going.
Yes. So, for example, even in the clients that I've seen through this modality, the nervous system and the vagus nerve is also connected to our diaphragms. And so the brain-gut connection, all these things, right? So I've also seen where in some clients, they're not occupying maybe even from the diaphragm down or the pelvic region down. And so it's almost like we don't, and especially part of freeze can even be derealization. So there can be a part of us that realizes we forget we have legs. We like forget to.
Mm-hmm.
Our pelvic floor or parts of our hips, which may present as maybe tightness or lower back pain or knee popping. It can be that subtle.
So just reconnecting to all your body parts.
Well, that polyvagal theory talks about the sympathetic and then the dorsal, and they're making sort of like when I listened to Steve Porges, who came up with this, he was saying below the belly button and above the belly button are this regular. And when you think about the heart and lungs, they're going to get a vagal system signal that says, yeah, do things, and we're going to shut down the digestive system, which is kind of below the belly button, and urinary. So sometimes people will avoid, inappropriately those kinds of things because
they're in stress
nerve,
and anxiety.
Yeah, and the
mode.
nerve firing is saying, okay, relax, And so we don't need that part of the system. We need the legs, arms, muscles, and the heart and lungs moving. So you can have a shock, a response to those things. But the idea of realization of knowing where you are, they talk about the face, heart connection, and all those muscles of the face that give expression change with this polyvagal theory, and the idea that you would maybe not get the input and interpret it. Your world gets smaller. It gets, your pupils constrict and that sort of stuff, and so you're not getting the information to make conscious decisions, evaluate and make decisions with, and you sort of like don't have the information you need except for this. I'm either going to run or I'm going to fall down.
And you're viewing everything as a threat.
Yeah, and I'm going to protect myself.
Yes.
And that's not a good way to live in a society of social interactions when you're shut down.
Yeah.
And you can't interpret signals.
Yeah, and it limits us to not just mentally, but physically. And so it has a ripple effect.
Well, before we have to wrap up shortly, so you mentioned that it was an Earth program. You said the word Earth, and we've had some of our most popular podcasts have been on earthing or forest bathing and just how nature can help us heal and help us feel good. So tell me, can you give me some examples? What do you mean when you say Earth counseling or Earth program? I can't remember exactly what you said.
Yeah, so it's definitely an earth-based program. And so it is held in nature. So all of my classes are outside, outdoors, in a group setting.
In Asheville, right?
Yeah, near Asheville.
Okay.
So we do that. And it's really also connecting into the philosophy of the earth itself. Carl learned the method there's a tracking component as well. So Tom Brown Jr. was a famous tracker. And so it is how we impact the earth, how we move off the earth, that there's a component to that as well. And then, just seeing how nature there's so many metaphors in nature. And so a lot of what's within us can be reflected out. It's also about using the earth as an energy source, which I loved your forest bathing episode because there was a lot of valid points in that. And also the grounding episode with the earthing episode, where you're using the earth as basically a recharging system. That the earth has its own energy field, and we can tap into that to, restore our own levels of energy by really making that contact on the earth. So part of the teachings at Wilderness Fusion is relearning how to make contact with the earth.
Love it.
Yeah. So someone who's graduated from this program, what kind of things are they doing with this new knowledge of the earth and healing?
Yeah, so we have several different, I think the purpose of the program is to really become all that we can be. And so I've seen graduates do all sorts of things. A lot of them start their own healing practice, their own bodywork practice. There's even some psychologists and licensed counselors who have incorporated some of these modalities into their practice as well. And we've had all types of students, no matter if they're going into healing and working with people or not. It's really helps them heal as well. I started the program for my own healing journey and then decided that, there's more to this.
Cool.
And so I did a career change, and that's what really got me into pursuing the mental health field.
That's wonderful. We need you.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that there's something out there that incorporates all of these things. that I guess quote unquote Western medicine doesn't.
Yeah, allopathic.
Yeah. But you're also, in training for psychology too. So I can't wait to see what you do with those two things.
It's going to be exciting.
Yeah, I really, part of my purpose is I would really like to see the Eastern and Western philosophies and psychologies merge a little bit more to close that gap. And I specifically have that interest in mind-body connection, in somatic therapy methods, which I think is really an all-encompassing, more holistic approach. So that's really why I'm interested in all of these things.
Oh, awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us and sharing about your experience. And
we hope you'll come back and let us know how it's going in a little bit.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. And if we read some more of these books, we'll get your opinion on those too.
Awesome. That sounds great. Yeah. I love your podcast, and it's such an honor to be a guest today.
Well, thank you for making time to be with us.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
I'm Eleanor at 360health, number 4, letter U.com, and helping you make healthy happen in your life. You can go to the website and start a conversation with me, and we'll see what we can do together.
And I'm Kristen Norton, one of the 3 registered dietitians at wellbalancednutrition.com, where we offer nutrition and wellness coaching to help you create healthy habits. You can check out our free content at wellbalancednutrition.com or sign up for a free clarity call to see if coaching is right for you.
Have a great day, everybody.
Bye, y'all.
Views and opinions stated in this podcast are solely those of the contributors and are not necessarily those of our distributors or hosting company. This podcast is copyrighted, and no part can be reproduced without the expressed written consent of Kristen and Eleanor.